Welcome back to the channel. As always, I just want to share with you guys what's on my mind, and I am realizing that I have had a mental shift in my view of HEX, and I want to talk to you guys about it. I think this is a good time for this video, and I want to explain even the timing of this coming out and why I feel somewhat satisfied in talking about this now. But I want to tell you guys that until relatively recently, I have had friends that through conversations, crypto comes up, and some of them have not invested in crypto, and I usually tell them something like, depending on who they are, it makes sense to me to put a portion of your investment portfolio into crypto. I would say consider 2% because historically 10x returns are not unheard of. They're not that uncommon. They're fairly common, and you're risking 2% of your portfolio for a potential 20% return. And if you get in it realizing that the play might be years, that the bull markets tend to be roughly 4 years apart, if you come in with that expectation and you get in relatively good cryptos, you have a potentially good upside with a relatively low downside. On top of that, I don't think this blockchain decentralized internet thing is going away. I don't necessarily feel confident telling anyone that I know that any particular token is going to exist in 20 years from now, but I feel fairly confident that this idea and this thing is going to exist. Getting in on it yourself, understanding it now, could just be an advantage. So I tend to talk to people in that way. And I've always told them, like, consider Bitcoin and Ethereum. I've been very reluctant to tell them any other tokens outside of that because my certainty in altcoins other than Bitcoin and Ethereum has been relatively low. That is changing, and I want to talk about that. So even though this is the HEX to USDC chart, I got in HEX on the very first day. I bought all through this original dip. And that's where the great majority of my HEX was purchased. Although people do ask me, have you bought since then? Yes, I have, for what it's worth. Although this was such a better deal, it's still just a significant portion of my portfolio came from this time. And for what it's worth, clearly I have a bias in this video because I've been in since that long, and I have something to gain if I guess other people buy this. So take that for what it's worth. That said, all through that time, I was not telling people about HEX. I was talking about it, but I was very, very reluctant to encourage people to buy it because I was like, I just didn't feel confident enough in my reasoning and my understanding of it long term. That's just the truth. That is changing. And I want to tell you guys, I've said some of this in my channel before, but I want to tell you some of my thoughts and why right now, I've said this before, but I'm just realizing how confident and where I'm at in it. It doesn't mean that I know this is going to happen. As always, whatever I'm saying, you guys have to decide for yourself. I'm just telling you my confidence level has changed, and I'm going to try to tell you why, and then you guys can, of course, make whatever decisions that you want. And I expect you to do that. I don't want you doing anything because I said you need to understand it for yourself. And I've watched people get in on good projects and sell them at terrible times because they didn't believe in the project or understand it. And I don't want that to be you with HEX. I need you to understand it and believe in it for yourself so that you can make a lot better actions. And you need to take responsibility for your own actions. And I totally believe that. But okay, one reason I think that this video is an opportune time, and like this is one reason I want to talk about this right now, is because we are down roughly 90% from our all-time high. I do not know that this is going to be the absolute low, or I don't know that this was the absolute low. We could have eventually a much bigger dip coming for all that I know, and I would say that it is probably greater than 50% in my mind that we have a further drop. But I want to talk about this now because we're down 90%. This is roughly 90% down. And I don't, for example, want to be the guy that's talking about a coin, good or not, when it's at its peak. Now's the time to get in. Now's the time to be looking at this project when it's down and it has the potential of so much more upside. Like if you bought today, it's the same as a Hexagon getting in May of last year, basically. And that's pretty great. You're making up for over a year's worth of time. And that's awesome. You might be late to the game, but you're really not, because the price is the same as it was back then. And like I said, it might drop lower, but now is when I want to be talking about it. Now we're in the bear market. Here's where you really want to be buying tokens, not when we're at the top of the bull market, for example. So cool. We've got a big drop, and we might have a big drop coming. My thought on the big drop coming is, if you don't know much about HEX, if you haven't looked into it, look into it now. Be prepared and know what you think about it before the drop comes, so that you can know how much risk reward you see in this token and can take advantage of a potential dip really well if we have it. It's another reason I really want to put this out. So another thing, I've talked about this before, when it comes to HEX, that makes me more confident in HEX long-term than almost any other token, is the fact that Hexicans are staking their tokens. Staking is not unique to HEX. A lot of tokens, Ethereum, and you can just name the tokens, they have a staking function. It's a very common thing now. Very few of them have relatively severe penalties for ending your stake early, and very few of them have a lockup time of up to 15 years like HEX. A lot of people that hold HEX have staked their HEX for the max length of time, which is 5,555 days. It's roughly 15 years. That, to me, and I've talked about this before, is, in my mind, massively important, because I think the fact that people have their money locked up for 15 years encourages it, naturally incentivizes their desire for this project to do well. And it incentivizes focus and attention by those individuals for 15 years. And it's, of course, not like at the end of 15 years they're going to be really focused on it. They're going to be focused on it every single one of those 15 years. And not only in theory does that make sense, like, well, in theory, the incentive is that people are going to care about the project and talk about it and focus on it. But you can see, now that HEX has existed for all this period of time, you can kind of look to the past and be like, what is happening? And you can see, I've never seen, I can just tell you, I've never seen a community like the Hexagon community pumping out so many websites, so many like helping you understand the game theory of HEX. Here's all the data on whatever random thing that you want to know about. It pretty much seems to exist for HEX, and none of these people, as far as I know, very, very few of them are paid by the project. They're all doing it out of their own funds, their own focus, and their own time. That, to me, is just proving that the theory of people having their funds locked up for 15 years and that creating focus and incentive to better the project is actually now shown as true. And I don't think that's going to stop. I don't see why that's going to stop. And just to compare also, Bitcoin is not 15 years old. If you can guarantee focus on HEX for 15 years, I just don't think that the short period of time HEX has existed, we've seen the top of HEX yet. I think comparing just the price today to the top that we've had in the past of a roughly 10x return is, I think it's very conservative. I don't know, unless we have a catastrophic flaw, I'm having a hard time seeing how we're not going to break our all-time high. And to me, this is why I'm saying, another reason why I'm saying HEX is now it seems like a more conservative, the risk is lower in HEX than other blockchains or cryptocurrencies or tokens or whatever you want to call them. I think the risk is lower. Another thing I just want to point out is if you go to, let's see if I can find it here. This is hexdailystats.com. Just want to show you something also. This is another one of those things that now that HEX has existed, we can look to the past with a little bit more information. There's a little bit less speculation, in my opinion, now that HEX has existed for this period of time, and it's building my confidence in this project. So if we look here at average stake length, so I've talked about how the max stake length is 15 years, and a lot of people are staking a portion of their HEX for that long. But what's the average stake length? The average stake length right now is 6.5 years, which in crypto terms, in my opinion, is basically eternity. That's a lot. That's the average. And I just want to show you this also. If we scroll back to the beginning of HEX here, if I can do this. So on day 3, the average stake length was 3.1 years. And if we just look at that column, as we scroll through time, we can just watch that average stake length go up and down a little bit, but basically it just slowly increases. I mean, 4 years, and then 5 years, 6 years, and now we're at 6.5. That's a good sign, because that tells me too, it tells me something else. It tells me that, or at least this is my explanation and assumption from this, that over time, as people understand the project better, because at the very beginning, it was 3 years, but as people have paid attention and played the system more, and as there's more adoption, we're seeing that it's incentivizing people to move from 3 years to 4 years to 5 years, all the way up to 6.5 years now for the average stake length. And that's a good sign where it's really interesting to see that. And I don't know how much longer that's going to continue for, but so far I just like the game theory is playing out, in my opinion, well. And I want to just talk too, why do we want people to stake? Well, cool, it gives incentive to care about the project. Totally true. But also pulls supply off the market. If it's staked, it can't be bought. You can end your stake. There's end stake penalties. I would, in 99% of cases, really suggest to not end your stake early. Why pay your penalty? But if you're staked, it can't be sold. It takes supply off the market. Demand remains the same, and there's less supply. Price tends to react positively. So as people are pulling supply off the market for 6.5 or 15 years, we're encouraging demand for that period of time. And the crazy thing is, it's not staying constant. We're not just continually staying at 3 years, pulling supply off, putting it forward 3 years. We've been pulling it off for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. And I just think that's a really good sign for HEX. And I'm tempted to get into other game theory, talk about how longer always pays better, which is totally true. In HEX, you always get more yield. They're incentivized basically to stake longer. And so there's reasons why people are, as they understand the system, there's reasons why they're staking longer over time. But I might save that for another video. But right now, I just feel like HEX has really changed in my own mind, and it is something that I want my friends to know about and be considering, especially now. There are good reasons to, in my opinion, to be focusing on and trying to understand HEX. If you're already in crypto or you want to play the crypto game, I would make HEX a part of your portfolio. And we've already got a big drop. Now's the time to learn about it. If we have another drop, now you'll be ready. We have a history of increasing stake lengths. We have a project that if the founder dies, the project doesn't fail because the code is already sealed. We're not expecting any code increases or code iterations or improvements. The code is what it is. It works the way that it is. We have the continued focus from the people that have invested for that period of time, basically guaranteed over time. And the length of time is greater than the existence of Bitcoin itself. To me, these are just relatively compelling reasons that take this investment, as risky and as volatile as crypto has been, and I expect it to be. It puts HEX up there at number one. I think the potential returns are going to be meaningful, and I think the risk as crypto goes is lower. So I just wanted to put this out. I might share this with some of my friends just to say, here's my thoughts, and I have changed, and I will be talking more with people around me about HEX if this comes up. Like, just consider it, and here's some of my reasons why. Anyway, guys, this is what's on my mind. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you in the next one.